Hi, my name's Chris Caddo and welcome to How to Become a Suburban Financial Champion. Now, what we're going to do over the next week in the next series of videos is to give you the fundamental skills and knowledge that you'll require to get ahead in your personal life, to get ahead financially so that you can have that financial freedom, you can provide for your family in a greater way, you can go on those holidays that you want to go on, you can have more time in your life, and you can feel more secure. And ultimately, it's all about financial freedom. It's all about being in control of your life and to be able to determine what you do, when you do it, and how you do it, and to have more control over your personal time. So how do we get there? Now, what we need to do is we need to teach you the core link between value, money, and wealth, and the relationship between the three so that you can understand where value and how value is created, the relationship with how it's transferred, how value is transferred through the use of money, then ultimately how we create wealth. Now, what I have here is a collection of money. So what is money? So I've got money here from Belgium. I've got money here from Brazil. I've got money here from Ceylon and Burma, some places that don't even exist anymore. But is money just bank notes? Or is money gold? Like this gold coin I have here, 1 ounce gold coin. Or is money silver coins? Or is money this Canadian maple leaf? Or perhaps this American eagle? What is money? Well, what we're going to do in this session is to be able to teach you what is money, you must first understand the concept of value and how value has been created. And the best way to give you that understanding is to give you a short history of mankind. Because by understanding how we have changed, how our lives has changed, what are the core things which determine the way we live today, if you have a good understanding of that and the relationship with how money transacts in the way we live today, the better you'll be, the much stronger position you'll be to understand the nature of money. And if you have a good foundation on understanding the nature of money, you'll have a better understanding on how you can control it in your life. So let's get into it. Let's start with giving you, and it's a very important piece, giving you a short history of money. So let's get into that right now. Okay guys, let's step into it. Now, in this first session in the series of how to become a suburban financial champion, what we're going to do is we're going to teach you and give you a short history of mankind. Now, you might be asking, why do I need to know that? Well, it's actually a cornerstone. It's actually a foundation block that you understand how value is created and the history and the progression of mankind. Because if you understand how value is created and how humans have progressed over time by producing value, by creating more value for others, by controlling the production of value. If you understand that, then you understand money and how money is related to value. Ultimately, you'll be in a position to create more wealth for yourself. So what do we want to do? What we want to do is give you the tools to understand value, understand the relationship with money, and so that you can create more wealth for yourself. So this session about a short history of mankind is actually a cornerstone piece. You must understand this, or you must have a good grasp of what value is, how we create value, why do humans live the way they do today. If you understand that, you're in a much better position to make better financial decisions. So let's get into it. Now, in this chart here, you might look at it and think to yourself, what the hell have you got there? Now, what we've got here is basically at the bottom axis, we've got years ago. Now, it's not the scale, but that's okay, because all we're doing here is giving you some concepts and a good grasp and understanding of history and how we have actually changed over time. It's not the specific dates itself is not important. It's more about the progression of mankind. And how are we going to do that? So in the horizontal axis, what we're going to do is we're going to point out some key changes in technology, the implications on our social being and how we go about and implications on society. Then also the exchange of value, how the exchange of value has changed over time. But let's begin with what was the first big monumental change or technological advancement for mankind. And what that was fire. Our ability to control fire. Before we were able to control fire, we were at the mercy of animals when darkness came. And not only that, but our days were shorter because we couldn't do very much once darkness came as well. We also couldn't create warmth, I should say, around us when the climate was cold. So we were at the mercy of the elements. And we also weren't able to cook our food. So there was a limitation in what we could eat and how we could preserve food. Our methods for preserving food and improving our health and protecting ourselves from disease. So by controlling fire, when we understood how to create fire and control fire about 1 million years ago, we took a massive leap in mankind because we could now fend from the animals. We could now control our own climates. We could create warmth for ourselves. So we could live in colder climates because we knew how to create warmth for ourselves. We could cook food. We could fend off animals. We had longer days, or we could work for longer hours, or consider and use our time for more hours in a day because we had light in darkness. If you've ever been to Egypt or researched Egyptology, what you'll learn and what you understand is that the Egyptians, back in ancient mankind, they used to worship the sun. And why did they worship the sun? Because the sun was the source of all life, as far as they were concerned. And as the sun rose in the morning, it brought life to the world around us. And as the sun set in the west, it brought darkness and death, potentially. Danger, at the very least. So it's interesting that the Egyptians considered a massive fireball in the sky, the sun, and our ability to control fire, which is, again, heat, source, life, that was the source of all life, and our ability to control that just made a massive difference to our lives. So if you look at the Nile, which flows from south to north, in the ancient times, everybody lived on the eastern side because that's where life was, and all the burial sites were on the western side because that's when darkness came and when death was potentially closer to us. So fire was a massive improvement in technology. It gave us great improvement in health and safety. But then what was the next big technological improvement? The next massive technological improvement was our ability to farm. Some clever cookie realised, what are we doing? What are we doing chasing animals around? Being nomadic, going to where the berries were at different times of the seasons or where the fruits were and following nature's path. Why don't we just create our own little nature area, if you like? What we call a farm. Why don't we just pen animals? Why don't we breed animals? So then we have access to those resources when we need to. Why don't we just find the seeds and grow the berries into fruits in rows near to our home so that we didn't have to traverse great distances and we didn't have issues with having to eat things straight away because we had to bring it all back to where our campsites were. So when we got into farming, that's when we started to increase our production of food. And when we increase the production of food and our ability to control food, what are we doing? What have we done? We've given ourselves more resources. We've given ourselves more access to energy. Think about that. Fire is a source of energy. Production of food is also a source of energy. Consider that. So when we were able to produce food, we were able to give ourselves more time as human beings. We're giving ourselves an abundance of resources. We could produce more food than we needed. Then we could spend our time doing other things. We could become more productive with our time. We didn't have to follow the animals around anymore. So if you think about that, and you think about, look, what were we doing to exchange value at that time? We begin with bartering. Now what was bartering? bartering is an exchange of coincidence, exchange of wants, a coincidence of exchange of wants. Now, what do I mean by a coincidence of exchange of wants? And what I mean by that is, let's say you had 2 sheep and you wanted a cow. You had to find somebody who's willing to trade you a cow for 2 sheep. And it wasn't until you found that you could actually make the exchange. So it wasn't very efficient. But about 3,000 years ago, we came up with a shekel. Now what a shekel is a collection of grain. So it's about 180 grains, about 11 gram. And we used a shekel to exchange value. It became like a promissory note. I'll give you these 4 cows if you give me X number of shekels. And a shekel was not only was it a commodity that you could actually eat, or grains which you could grow and produce something with, but you could give that to somebody else. And that became a monetary unit, our first forms of money. So that was about 5,000 years ago, or 3,000 BC. But what we also had as some of the first forms of money was a thing called a cowrie. Now, in the Indian Ocean area, so Africa, India, East Asia, and also some parts of the Western Pacific, we used to use cowrie, which was a seashell, as a medium of exchange of goods. Now, why do we use cowries or seashells? Well, it was very hard to counterfeit at the time. I should say at the time, because eventually we had ships that found massive loads of cowries on deserted islands, and we could basically manipulate the circumstance. So that's when cowries disappeared from the scene. However, before that actually happened, we used cowries because it was very hard to counterfeit cowries. Cowries are seashells. Sea animals the animals actually had to create that over time, so there was a limited number of production of seashells, so you could use seashells to exchange values of goods because it was very hard to counterfeit. So we used seashells and cowries, and it wasn't until about 3,000 years ago that we started to use coins, or not even 3,000 years ago, when we started to use coins. But what happened there? Why did we start using coins? Well, look, because we started farming, and we were able to give ourselves more time in the day, we were able to learn and apply our skills in different ways. And we started to be better at using metals and the furnace. We started to be able to use the furnace and create alloys and create steel. And as we became cleverer, as we improved our use of the furnaces, we started to create stronger levels of steel. So in that, what happened was we started to improve our ability to use machinery because we started to improve our technology. And it could only do that because we had more time in our day. We were no longer hunting and gathering. We started to farm. So we applied our knowledge and our skills in a different way. And about 1,000 years ago, we started to create what we call guilds. So we started to have blacksmiths. We started to have carpentry. We started to have masons. And they became people who did not farm, who did not hunt, but they had a skill in which they could trade their skills for money. And what did guilds do? Guilds gave us greater expertise. It improved our technology, improved our skills in different areas. And eventually, it just had some massive improvements in science and engineering. So in the 1700s, Clement Clark came up and invented the reverberatory furnace. And what did that do? That was actually a tipping point, because what he was able to do was create a furnace which was so much hotter, which enabled us to use stronger steel and stronger machinery. And that was the tipping point into the Industrial Revolution, because then we started to use machines for mass production. We had steam engines, we had textiles machines. We just started to go forward in leaps and bounds because we were able to control or leverage our understanding of the world around us through technology, through science, through our ability. So we had this era where we just went forwards in leaps and bounds in our understanding of the world around us. And we started to apply that to our lives, to think about, well, how do we add value to other people? So when we did that, we started to move forward in leaps and bounds. So from about 250 to 100 years ago, that's when the Industrial Revolution started to kick in. That's when we really started to move forward. That's when our lives as humans and how we lived, particularly in the Western world, absolutely changed. But how did we? What were some other critical things? Two critical things that happened in the 19th century: our ability to control electricity, our ability to create electricity and transmit it in long distances. So Westinghouse and Nikola Tesla came up with AC currents. And with AC currents, first time we were able to transmit electric power long distances. Now that just made a significant difference in how we could transfer energy. All of a sudden we could have light bulbs in our houses. We didn't even have to use fire anymore. It just completely changed the way we lived. Then there was another person, and his name was James Young. And James Young, what James Young did was James Young perfected the distillation of what they called paraffins. And what paraffins is another word for kerosene. And what that led to was the use of petroleum. So see what's happening here? Can you see the relationship? Controlling fire, production of food so that we could have more energy, improving our use of furnaces so we can have stronger steel. Then we went into the industrial age because we were able to leverage machinery through steam engines. And as we create more time for ourselves, as we create more and a greater abundance of resources for ourselves, we start to perfect and control the use of fossil fuels through electricity currents and then through the use of petroleum. But can you see the relationship? It's all got to do with leveraging and enhancing our ability to use energy and add value in greater ways and improve how humans live overall. It all changes. Some people didn't like the change, but it all changed the way we went about our work and improved. It provided us with the opportunity to improve the lifestyle of human beings all round. So what does that mean? So in terms of shekel and coinage, paper money came into being, the first use of paper money came into being in the Tang dynasty. There was a Shang dynasty before that, but in the Tang dynasty, they used paper money and it was the first time that it was stipulated as a legal requirement. So you had to, in that part of China, you had to use paper money. Now, why didn't they use coinage? Why did they move away from coinage? Well, it was too difficult. Because if you had a lot of money, all of a sudden you had this very heavy chest to move around. It didn't make sense. So you needed something which was lighter and a bit more flexible, and that was stipulated by the government that you had to use that. It was legislated, I should say, by the government that you had to use that form of money. So paper money came into being, and Marco Polo, the great Italian explorer, came back from China or East Asia and introduced those thoughts and those ideas into Europe. The first great banks, the first great financial institutions of Europe were in Italy. Now, the first great European financial institutions may have been in Italy, but it wasn't until a couple hundred years later when the Dutch created the Dutch East India Company, where the concept of companies and organisations which were held by shares came into being. And that's when we started to create financial instruments, companies and financial instruments, where we started to understand and to leverage the understanding of companies, shares, monies as depository, promissory notes, monies which were held as a legitimate claim to an intangible asset that allowed us to create and start to create exotic financial instruments. So what we fundamentally need you to understand in this short history of money is that value, because remember what we're trying to teach here, we're trying to teach the relationship between value, money, and wealth. And in this first session, it's critical that you understand that value is time and energy. Anything of value either creates time for somebody or transfers energy. Think about it. Nothing happens in this world without time. So without time, nothing exists. And without the transfer of energy, whether you're giving somebody energy or absorbing their energy, Without the transfer of energy in nature, nothing happens. Everything also stands still. So for anything to progress, for any action to occur, I should say, that we need time and energy. And how we transfer value is we transfer how value is created is when we give people time or we give people energy. And how do we do that? Well, it's either through our work and our labour that we apply for the benefit of other people, or it's through efficiencies. It might be products or services that we can give people, or which allows them to be more efficient in their day, or it could be ideas, it could be the application of knowledge that we do on behalf of other people, and we make them more efficient in their lives, so we add value to their lives. Or it's inspiration. When you watch entertainment, when you hear stories being told, you're being inspired, and that gives you energy, and people pay for that. Why? Because you're exchanging something of value which will add to their lives, add to the way they think, add to the way they behave, and that's inspiring. And inspiration is also considered a valuable item. Education, when we transfer knowledge, we are adding value. We're giving people the skills and the understanding to improve their circumstance, to add value to others. So education is also an application of value. It also gives people more time in their day and transfers energy. And then, of course, there is nourishment. Food. Food provides energy. Just as we talked about the farming and production of farms, we give people energy through the production of food. And so restaurants, cafes, all they trade in the transfer of energy through food. So value is time and energy. Now we must understand the relationship with money is that money is a medium of exchange. So money is what we use to transfer value. It's that promissory note, it's that coinage, it's that shekel. So in the next session, what we will do is we'll go into and we'll give you an understanding of why money is not a store of value and why money is perishable. It's really important that you understand these concepts. Because if you understand these concepts, now we've talked about value and how value is created and how our lives has changed through the creation of value over time. Then we exchange that value for money, which is money is a medium of exchange. It's fundamental you understand this. You fundamentally understand how energy and the use of energy and the control of energy has absolutely changed the way we live, and how you yourself is a source of energy. That you yourself is a source of value which you can create for others. And that's fundamentally what you're exchanging for money. And money is only a medium of exchange. So I look forward to seeing you in the next session where we'll talk about opportunity cost, decision making, and then we'll go into how you can save, how money is perishable, and how you can save literally over $100,000 in your mortgage repayments. I look forward to speaking to you then. Bye for now.